yesterday's news.
Hello and welcome to Old News, the programme and podcast which looks at news stories of the day through the papers of yesterday. This week, Manx Shearwaters. Yes, those birds once found in abundance on the Calf, driven nearly to extinction. Now it seems, according to the most recent story from the Manx Wildlife Trust, that the numbers are bouncing back and responding well to the eradication of longtails on the islet to the south of the island, which made me wonder about their history. When you look back, it's a wonder they managed to survive at all, what with the predation by longtails and predation by, well, us, mankind, of course. You just knew it, didn't you? Also, a bit of pollution caused some problems at one stage as well. I take you to the Isle of Man Examiner, Friday, October the 5th, 1923. Rare Manx bird gassed, we read. Shearwaters' fate in Lancashire. The following paragraph appeared in Tuesday's Evening Express, we're told. A bird picked up by 3 colliers in Aspel near Wigan has been identified by Mr Edwin Bell, a Wigan ornithologist, as a Manx Shearwater, one of the puffin family unknown in Lancashire. It probably strayed from the Isle of Man, where the shearwater is an occasional summer or autumnal visitor, and where it is known by seafaring folk as a mackerel cock. It is more commonly found in Greenland. The Aspel specimen is 14 inches long and fell to the ground after flying over some coke ovens. It is said to be not uncommon for birds to be stupefied by fumes in this way. Lord knows what it must have been like in the atmosphere around there. Puffins of the Calf Isle, the history of the Manx Shearwater was the title of an article in the Journal of the Manx Museum, Saturday, June the 1st of 1940. The Manx Shearwater, we read, Puffinus p. puffinus, although no longer genuinely Manx, could have no better trivial name. Its known history is contained largely in the early published literature of man and in many of the unpublished historical documents relating to this island. The true home of the bird was not in the Isle of Man itself, but on the much smaller islet of the Calf at its southern extremity, an islet whose early story, like that of so many similar places, is largely that of traffic in seabirds for those desirable products, food, feathers and oil. Although the Manx puffin, that's M-A-N-K-S as it was called, a name still in vogue among Southside fishermen, has deserted us as a breeding species, this was in 1960, it is still not unusual to see large numbers about at sea quite close to the island. Those who cross frequently between Liverpool and Douglas should have no difficulty in making its acquaintance, for throughout the summer it is present in some numbers in the Irish Sea. It is smaller than a herring gull, dark brown above and white beneath, and may be seen singly or in small parties, invariably flying close to the waves, a few quick wing beaks succeeded by a short glide. It is from this peculiarity of flight that the Shearwaters, a pelagic race with many representatives distributed over the seas of the world, are so called. The earliest mentions of puffins, which in all probability were Manx Shearwaters, belong to the Scilly Isles, where there are still flourishing colonies of these birds. These can be dated circa 1337, about which time the Isles were leased by Edward III to Abbot Ranulphus of Blankminster for 6 shillings and 8pence, or 300 puffins. As yet, for there is in the Manx Museum a mass of unexamined manuscripts likely to contain references to the birds, the Calf of Man colony has no earlier recorder than William Camden, who referred to it briefly in his Britannia of 1586. The appellative Manx was given to the species by the famous ornithologist Francis Willoughby, who made a systemic description of the species in 1676 from specimens procured at the Calf of Man. Willoughby, however, was not the earliest writer to give us a good description of the Manx Shearwater. He was forestalled by the observant and industrious Challoner, a member of the commission appointed by Lord Fairfax to visit the island in 1651-52. Challoner was a noted antiquary and by no means an observer of natural life. Among ornithologists, he has failed to receive the credit that is his due for to have been instrumental in securing for posterity the earliest recognisable drawing of the great auk, as well as an excellent delineation of the gannet, and the best of the early descriptions of the Manx puffin, are all worthy achievements. James Challoner wrote, "Of fowl this island hath plenty, and great variety, especially in the Isle of Calf, where there is a sort of seafowl called puffinus, of a very unctuous constitution, which breed in the coney holes, the conies leaving their burrows for that time, are never seen with their young, but either very early in the morning or late in the evening, nourishing, as is conceived, their young with oil, which drawn from their own constitution is dropped into their mouths, for that being open there is found in their crops no other sustenance but a single sorrel leaf, which the old give their young for digestion's sake, as is conjectured. The flesh of these birds is nothing pleasant, fresh. Don't eat the Manx Shearwaters, people. We read new facts about the Manx puffins in the Journal of the Manx Museum of Monday, December the 1st, 1941. New facts about the puffins, properly called Manx Shearwaters of the Calf Isle, have come to light from further examination of the manuscripts in the museum library since the appearance of Williamson's paper on the subject. The size of the puffin harvest, there is a problem, we read, of considerable interest in itself and also in relation to the total size of the colony on the Calf. But as Williamson truly observes, authorities are at variance as to the annual produce. 2.5 centuries ago, the naturalist Willoughby recorded that some years there is 30 pounds made of the young puffins taken in the Calf of Man, although they usually sell them for about 9p the dozen. This certainly suggests a maximum harvest of not far short of 10,000 birds, but that is an outside estimate based on the lowest price. 1 shilling per dozen was the standard price. Among the Castle Russian papers is an account book previously unstudied containing an account of puffins sold out of Ye Calf Isle in the year 1716. This records in detail the sale of quantities varying from 1 to 10 dozen puffins to some 100 or so customers on the Isle of Man, a total of 26.5 dozen being sold for £13, 4 shillings and 6p. That is 3,174 birds at a penny each. Governor Horne heads the list with a purchase of 10 dozen birds, while parsons, military and civil officers, and even the puffin hunters themselves are included in the long list of purchases. Thus, 1716 was a poor year judged by Willoughby's maximum figure, 3,000 as against 10,000, as this record is indisputable. It goes on to say one of the most valuable conclusions Williamson is said to have established his paper relates to the sudden extermination of the puffin colony on the Calf. He shows 2 reliable writers, G. Woods and Mr. Quayle, about 20 years after the period, attributed the destruction of the puffins to the longtails which escaped from a wreck and established themselves in the burrows on the island. And that certainly seems to have been the case of late, until recent times when the longtails have all but been eradicated, it would seem, allowing the Manx Shearwaters to flourish once again. Although it's amazing there were any left at the rate we were slaughtering them for useful food and oil and feathers. Turning to the Mona's Herald, Tuesday, October the 14th, 1952, Manx Shearwater appears again in the street of an inland town. The Manx Shearwater is in the news again. This time it was found flapping along a street in Stalybridge a few days ago. It was taken to a member of the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, who identified it as a Manx Shearwater and described it as a maritime bird seldom found inland. It was black and white specimen with webbed feet and measuring 14 inches in length. According to the RSPB expert, these birds breed mainly on islands off the mainland, and they come ashore only in flocks by night to feed their young. The bird found at Stalybridge was in an exhausted condition when it was picked up, and it was taken to a local reservoir where it promptly exhibited its diving abilities. When its rescuers returned later in the week, it had disappeared, presumably to return to its natural environment near the sea. The description of the bird seems to bear out the theory advanced by our correspondent Ornitho last week, that the Manx Shearwater is none other than the maritime bird which is known around the Manx coast as the gannet. Well, I don't think gannets and shearwaters are the same birds. The Isle of Man Examiner, Friday, October the 16th, 1953, has an article entitled "Shearwater Flies into Luton." A Manx shearwater was found in Luton last week, a rare event for a seabird to be found so far inland. The bird was injured and was incapable of flying. Its discovery provided the local newspaper with a good story and pictures, and a cutting has been sent to the Examiner by Mrs. Lillian Patterson, the cottage Colby, whose sister in Luton was very interested in the story. It doesn't say whether that bird survived or not. And finally, better news in the Isle of Man Daily Times, Tuesday, December the 27th, 1960. The Manx Shearwater is back. Before the days when poultry prices were fixed by the Boards of Agriculture, Christmas dinner in the homes of Manxmen might have been a seabird. Yes, you've guessed it. The Manx Shearwater might have been the bird on your Christmas table. 300 years ago, there was a large colony of shearwaters on the Calf of Man, and according to an article in the Manx Museum Journal by Ina Brun, thousands of the birds were killed for food. Well, we've been hearing. Mr. Brun, who was a warden on the Calf during the last 2 summers, says it is known from the records that between 4,000 and 9,000 young shearwaters were slaughtered for food annually. And he adds, at one time a proportion of these birds went to Richard Stevenson of Balladool, an ancestor of Sir Ralph Stevenson, who in 1643 gave up the Calf of Man to the Earl of Derby and received in exchange for the islet certain closes in the north and a yearly payment of 500 puffins, which would have been shearwaters, of course. Mr. Brun says that the shearwater population on the Calf at the time was very considerable, perhaps the largest the world has ever known. Well, we soon saw to that, didn't we? And he says that after an absence of at least 170 years, the Manx Shearwater is once more present on its old breeding ground, the Calf of Man. I'd have thought they'd been worried about coming back. It was, he says, on the Calf that the Manx Shearwater was first described in 1676. The time of its disappearance is uncertain, he says, and apparently why it disappeared is also uncertain. Well, I think we have a good idea now. In any case, it would not stay permanently, as according to Mr. Brun, shearwaters spend most of their lives at sea and only come to the island burrows at breeding time. Another strange thing about them is that they are strictly nocturnal on their breeding grounds and have an unerring instinct for finding their nest holes in the dark. Mr. Brun believes that the main reason it disappeared from the Calf was as a result of the depredations of longtails, which have accounted for the decimation of large seabird colonies in other parts of the world. When the colony on the Calf thrived 300 years ago, between 4,000 and 9,000 were slaughtered, as we heard, for food annually. Conditions on the Calf at present are more favourable for the breeding of shearwaters than for many years. Owing to the scarcity of rabbits, the gulls are attacking the cliff longtails for food and so removing the enemy of the shearwater. It is obvious that the longtail population on the Calf has greatly decreased, he says. And he concludes, although a breeding record cannot be accepted without the ultimate proof of an egg or a nestling, we are convinced from our experiences during the 1960 season the Manx Shearwater is again breeding in small numbers in its most famous home. It is unfortunate that their most frequented area was not discovered until late in our short season. It is to be hoped that these pioneers will withstand the longtail predation in the years to come, and that a colony will be established from this small beginning. Naturalists and Manxmen alike will welcome the return to the island of this interesting bird which bears its name. Well, I think that is very true. And it seems now, here in 2025, that there are somewhere around 1,000 pairs on the Calf. So all that hard work, it would seem, has paid off. What a lovely thing to have back on the Calf of Man, and hopefully we won't put them on the Christmas table this time. Manx Shearwaters, perhaps more in the news than you would have thought. They've certainly been in the news for a long time, so they definitely qualify for old news. Until next week, cheerio. You're gonna be yesterday's news.